The Leave campaign made a number of promises about immigration in the run-up to the 2016 Brexit referendum, and they had a good reason for doing this. But let me recap those promises again. It was taking back control of their borders, and this meant ending free movement of people between the UK and the EU. And cutting immigration to the tens of thousands was one of them. This was a specific target that was often repeated by Leave campaigners. And controlling immigration from outside the EU. This meant introducing a points-based system for non-EU migrants. Worked well, as we see in the outcome of the video. The Leave campaign also argued that immigration was putting a strain on public services and driving down wages. They claimed that leaving the EU would allow the UK to control immigration and reduce its negative effects. It's important to note that the Leave campaign did not provide any specific details about how they would achieve these promises. However, they argued that leaving the EU would give the UK the freedom to control immigration in a way that was not possible while the UK was a member of the EU. Yeah, illegal ways were not allowed while they were in the EU. The Leave campaign's promises about immigration were a key factor in the victory in the Brexit referendum. Well, they succeeded in reducing migration from the EU, that's true. The exact number of EU citizens who have left the UK since the Brexit referendum in 2016 is not known, but estimates range from 200,000 to 500,000. The Office for National Statistics, ONS, estimates that net migration of EU citizens to the UK fell from 194,000 in the year ending June 2016 to 119,000 in the year ending June 2020, and that was a decline of 58%. The ONS also estimates that 5.2 million citizens had applied to the EU settlement scheme by the end of September 21, but some of those people definitely have left the UK since then. The 2021 census showed that there were 3.9 million EU citizens living in England and Wales, down from 4.4 million in 2011. And this suggests that perhaps as many as 1 million EU citizens in England and Wales who had applied to the EU settlement scheme were no longer in the UK. The reasons for EU citizens leaving the UK are complex and varied, but most Brexit. A lot have left because they were concerned about their future rights after Brexit, and they found it difficult to find a job or afford housing in the UK. And Brexit really was a big part of the whole thing. And it's important to note that the number of EU citizens leaving the UK is just one part of the story. The UK also saw a significant increase in immigration from non-EU countries in the years following the Brexit referendum. And this suggests that the overall impact of Brexit on migration to the UK is still not a big one. But there is an increase they definitely didn't want. The UK saw a significant increase in immigration from non-EU countries in the years following Brexit and the referendum, as I said. The net migration of non-EU citizens to the UK rose from 166,000 in the year ending June 2016 to 244,000 in the year ending 2020, and that was an increase of 48%. And there are a number of factors that have contributed to this increase, especially the uncertainty created by the Brexit referendum and the subsequent negotiations may have made some people from non-EU countries more likely to come to the UK than the people from the EU. The UK's new immigration system, which came into effect in January 2021, makes it easier for some skilled workers from non-EU countries to come to the UK. And the UK's economy has been relatively strong in the years before Brexit, and that might have attracted still people when you compare it to their home countries. The increase in immigration from non-EU countries has been welcomed by some businesses, which say it helps to fill skills shortages. But it has also been criticized by some politicians and commentators who argue that it puts a strain on public services and drives down wages. Yeah, GB News, Nigel Farage, and so on. The impact of the increase in immigration from non-EU countries on the UK is still being debated. It's likely that the full impact will not be known for several years, though. But there are some additional details about the increase in immigration from non-EU countries to the UK I want to mention. The largest number of non-EU migrants came from India, followed by China, the United States and Australia. The majority of non-EU migrants were skilled workers, but there was also a significant increase in the number of low-skilled workers. The increase in immigration from non-EU countries was concentrated in London and the southeast of England. The UK government has said that it wants to attract the brightest and best from around the world. But it's also committed to controlling immigration and ensuring that it does not put a strain on public services, and we see how good that went. The government's plans for immigration after Brexit are quite controversial. Xenophobia, or the fear or hatred of foreigners, was a major factor in the Brexit vote. The Leave campaign exploited people's fears about immigration, arguing that leaving the EU would allow the UK to control immigration and reduce its negative effects. And the Leave campaign used a number of negative stereotypes about immigrants in their campaign materials. They claimed that immigrants were taking jobs away from British workers, putting a strain on public services and driving down wages. And they also claimed that immigrants were not integrating into British society and were a threat to British culture. Didn't know that. I loved the sandwiches. These negative stereotypes played on people's fears and prejudices and helped to persuade some people to vote Leave, or a lot. But it's important to note that not all Leave voters were motivated by xenophobia, but quite a number. Some people voted Leave for other reasons, such as concerns about the UK's sovereignty or the EU's bureaucracy. They were told enough lies about that too. A study by Goldsmiths, University of London, found that British citizens who agreed that immigrants threatened their values and way of life were more likely to have voted to leave the EU. The study also found that this relationship was stronger in areas with higher levels of immigration. Another study by the University of Oxford found that people who were more likely to vote Leave were also more likely to believe that immigrants were taking jobs away from British workers, putting a strain on public services and driving down wages. These studies suggest that xenophobia was a significant factor in the Brexit vote. And once again, I have to say, it was not the only factor. The lies about sovereignty and bureaucracy and the red bus, you all know what I'm talking about. But the full impact of xenophobia on the Brexit vote is still being debated. But it is clear that xenophobia was a major factor in the decision of the people to vote Leave. Xenophobia has been a problem in the UK for many years, but it has become more pronounced in recent years. There are a number of factors that have contributed to this. The rise of populism and nationalism is one thing. Populist and nationalist movements often scapegoat immigrants and refugees, blaming them for economic problems and social ills, and this can create an atmosphere of fear and hostility towards immigrants, especially if the government does that. And the economic downturn that began in 2008 has led to increased unemployment and insecurity, which can also make people more susceptible to xenophobic messages. And of course, the rise of social media. Social media platforms can amplify xenophobic messages and create echo chambers where people are only exposed to information that confirms their existing prejudices. And, especially in the UK, the decline of trust in institutions. People are increasingly distrustful of traditional institutions such as the government and the media, and this can make them more likely to believe the xenophobic messages that are spread by alternative sources. The Brexit referendum was a major turning point in the development of xenophobia in the UK. As I said, the Leave campaign exploited people's fears about immigration, and the result of the referendum was seen by some as a victory for xenophobia. Since the Brexit referendum, there has been a rise in hate crimes against immigrants and refugees. There have also been reports of increased discrimination against immigrants in the workplace and in housing. The government claims to have taken some steps to address xenophobia, but definitely more needs to be done than that, and not their work for xenophobia. It's important to challenge xenophobic messages and to promote understanding and tolerance between different cultures. And there are indeed some things that can be done to address xenophobia. One thing is education. Schools should teach children about the importance of tolerance and the understanding of different cultures. And of course, the media. The media should be more responsible in reporting on immigration and refugees. They should avoid using negative stereotypes and should focus on the positive contributions that immigrants make to society. Here in Germany, we would need 400,000 a year. They always forget that. And of course, the government should take steps to protect immigrants from hate crimes and discrimination and not commit them themselves. They should also promote policies that are designed to create a more inclusive society instead of separating people. And there's us all. We can all play a role in challenging xenophobia. We should speak out against it when we see it, and we should promote tolerance and understanding. Xenophobia and racism are both forms of prejudice and discrimination, but they are not the same thing. As I said, xenophobia is the fear or hatred of people from other countries or cultures, and racism is the belief that one race is superior to another. Xenophobia can be based on a fear of the unknown or a belief that people from other cultures are different and therefore dangerous. It can also be based on a sense of entitlement or superiority, where people believe that their own culture is the best and that other cultures are inferior. You know that narrative. Racism, on the other hand, is based on the belief that one race is superior to another. This belief can be based on physical characteristics such as skin color or on cultural factors such as language or religion. Racism can lead to discrimination, violence, and even genocide. We all remember history. It's important to note that xenophobia and racism can overlap, of course. For example, a person who is xenophobic may also be racist. But it's also possible to be xenophobic without being racist and vice versa. And I can give you some examples that differentiate there. For xenophobia first, a person who's afraid to fly because they're worried about meeting people from other countries. Or a person who refuses to eat food from other cultures because they think it is dirty or unhealthy. Or a person who is just hostile towards immigration or refugees. On the other side, I have examples of racism. That's a person who believes that black people are less intelligent than white people, for example. Or a person who refuses to hire someone because of their race. Or a person who commits a hate crime against someone of a different race. It's important to be aware of the difference between xenophobia and racism so that we can all challenge and combat these forms of prejudice and discrimination. But they are both still unacceptable. And I mentioned this in earlier videos, but when I was living in the UK, of course there was xenophobia, and there were some really harsh words, and I'm sorry I'm gonna have to repeat one, because that was the one I heard the most while I was in the UK with regard to Western Asian people, and that was Pakis. That is a very insulting word for those not from the UK, and I know who they refer to, of course, and that was used regularly already. And that was more the entitlement part from xenophobia than the racism part, but there was a lot of that going on already, and that was quite a long time ago. And it is on the rise, and the Brexit campaign, of course, used all of this, like other people of this kind, like the German AfD and others, use this for their purposes. And it is growing. And it's not only growing in the UK, of course, but in the UK is one of the big examples here. And that's why I had to bring the topic on this channel as well. They're not the only ones, so all the whataboutist commentators can skip their comments, they get deleted anyway. I know that this happens in other places as well, but this is my UK channel, and so this has to be a topic based on the UK here on this channel. And in Hungary, Poland, Germany, and other countries, and the USA especially, with Trump is using that as well a lot, of course we know it's there. But it doesn't make it any better what's going on in the UK for years. And it's time that the people are really aware of this and do something against this in their everyday life. But as long as the government is using that themselves just for a minor hope of somehow winning the next election again, this problem will grow. And that's why I decided to make this video now, because we might even see more of that if the government doesn't stop, and I don't expect them to stop. If you want to know something more right now, the next video is right in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.